General outflow of the heart begins with oxygenated blood that is being pumped out of the left ventricle into the ascending aorta. There are some branches off of the aorta, the first of which is the two branches that lead directly to the myocardium, called the left coronary artery and the right coronary artery. There are then three major branches off of the aortic arch. They begin with the brachiocephalic trunk, the left common carotid artery, and the left subclavian artery. A lot of times when you look at the names of blood vessels, you can kind of figure out where they go to. So the brachiocephalic trunk leads to the arm and the head. The left common carotid artery leads to the left side of the head. The left subclavian artery leads to the left side of the shoulder region area and is going to continue to branch out. This would be the left subclavian artery, where I have the laser pointer. On the cadaver model that you see to the right on this slide, this is actually pointing out the brachiocephalic trunk. So it would be the first major branch off of the aortic arch. On our next slide, we have the general arterial flow, which continues beyond the aortic arch. It becomes the descending thoracic aorta. This follows the aortic arch and several arteries that emerge to the thoracic wall. The name changes to the descending abdominal aorta once it passes through the diaphragm. So it's the same blood vessel, just has a different name because of its location. It then is going to split in the lower abdominal area to become the left and right common iliac arteries. Those common iliac arteries then continue to divide further into the internal and external iliac arteries. And we can see then some of the veins shown on this particular slide. For example, in the image which is to the right here of this cadaver image, you can actually see the brachiocephalic trunks. I'm sorry, not trunks. The term trunk would be referring to the artery. In this case, though, these are the brachiocephalic veins. Most of the time, there's an artery and a vein that kind of match up with each other. One of the exceptions, though, is here. There's only one brachiocephalic trunk for the artery, but in this case, there are two brachiocephalic veins. The bottom image from the cadaver is showing us the superior vena cava, which is going to lead directly into the right atrium. So at the top, you can see the beginning of the brachiocephalic trunk. Then those two brachiocephalic trunks are going to lead into the superior vena cava. So the superior vena cava is formed from merging of the right and the left brachiocephalic veins and eventually drains into the right atrium. The inferior vena cava returns blood to the right atrium from the lower limbs, pelvis, perineum, and abdominal structures. This slide is showing us blood flow that is through the head as well as in the neck area. And in this case, this image is actually showing you the right internal carotid artery. So you should be able to identify this image on a quiz or on a test. So the left and the right common carotids are going to supply most of the blood to the neck and the head. At the top of the carotid arteries, they're going to divide into external and internal carotid arteries. So again, what we see on this cadaver image here is showing you the internal carotid artery, which would be after the point where they divide. So the left and right common carotids, which this is one of the common carotid, it's going to split, leading to the internal carotid artery as well as the external carotid artery. On this image here, we are seeing much of the same thing, but on a diagram. So let's take a look at some of the main blood vessels, like the brachiocephalic artery. The brachiocephalic artery is the same thing as the trunk, so you may see it written a couple different ways. The brachiocephalic artery / trunk is going to lead to the common carotid artery. That common carotid artery is then going to split to the internal carotid artery and the external carotid artery in this general area right here. And then that's going to deliver oxygen and nutrients to the rest of the head. This slide is showing the veins now in the same general vicinity. And so in this example, we actually see the internal jugular vein. So I mentioned to you that a lot of the arteries and veins are going to kind of pair up and have similar names. This would be one of those exceptions. There is no such thing as a jugular artery, only a jugular vein. Just like there's no such thing as a carotid vein, only a carotid artery. So the venous return is through the internal jugular vein or the external jugular vein. And both of these veins then are going to drain into the subclavian vein, which eventually goes to the brachiocephalic vein, and then the superior vena cava. This diagram is showing the similar structures that we just saw. So we're starting with the head in this case, going back towards the heart. We have different veins like occipital vein, facial vein, etc. What I want you to know is that those lead into the external jugular vein, internal jugular vein, which goes in eventually into the subclavian vein and brachiocephalic vein. You should be aware of the general tissues that arteries lead to, or that those various tissues that would lead into the venous circulation. For example, we talked about the celiac trunk earlier. That's a branch off of the abdominal aorta, and that leads to the left gastric, splenic, and common hepatic arteries. For the liver, you saw the hepatic vein. Hepatic vein leads into the inferior vena cava, and it drains blood from the liver that goes into the hepatic vein. So you're going to be responsible for some of the major blood vessels that I've highlighted and I've kind of pointed out. So on this diagram, for example, you don't need to know any of these specific veins of the neck, like the occipital vein, maxillary vein, facial vein, and so on.